Welcome to the third in a series of video podcasts with authors, topic experts, and exemplary leaders on a variety of topics of interest to today's business leaders. You're going to love my guest for today, guaranteed, Bradley J. Sachs. Bradley is a skilled and passionate operations and customer experience executive with Delaware North. They are a global leader in hospitality. Delaware North has annual revenues of $4 billion, 500 million annual customer interactions, and 60,000 associates. But if that's not enough, Mr. Sachs also serves as a managing partner for SHG Consulting Management. So please help me welcome a man who takes a strategic, proactive, and inclusive approach to driving change that results in customer-centric business growth, Mr. Bradley Sachs. Good morning, Bradley. It's good to see you.
Good morning, Mary Jane. It's good to see you as well, especially in these unusual and interesting times.
Isn't that the truth? You know, I'm excited because you obviously are in the hospitality industry, so I've got a lot of questions for you. But probably the first one would be operational excellence and customer loyalty, because that is your area of expertise, has been front and center for you for a very long time. But that was then, and this is now. And I'm not assuming that those aren't important, they are. But how has your focus changed between like this pre-pandemic and now? I'm assuming there's been some change.
So things have certainly changed. What we have done historically when we're thinking about customers or guests is we're thinking about their experiences of the past and what can we learn from those experiences to enhance future experiences. I think what we're looking at much more today, I know what we're looking at much more today, is the idea of the future rather than the past. So what needs to be in place to make you comfortable enjoying our businesses, whether it's a restaurant, an attraction, any of our many businesses, traveling through an airport, going to a sports arena. We're really trying to identify what in the future makes you comfortable visiting us and what has to be in place for you to want to do that. Think about a casino, which we operate several of. You're in close quarters. Many of the patrons are seniors, and you want to feel safe. And so what is it that means for those individual customers? So one of the big changes is instead of being a little bit more past focused, we're a lot more future focused in trying to understand the needs of our customer. That's probably one of the bigger changes.
Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking you're really going to have to think in terms of what kinds of, and I'm going to say behaviors, they would expect from you so that they can exhibit the kind of behaviors that allow them to feel comfortable in your employ or your, your facilities.
That's for sure. So we're really looking at what are the behaviors they want to see out of our team members? And then what are the things they want in place? What's important to them? Social distancing. And not only that, but what does that mean to that particular type of customer? Does that mean in a casino that you're 4 slot machines away from someone? Does it mean in a restaurant that your table is 6 feet away, which most people think? Or are people more comfortable with 8 or 10 feet away? And so it's really understanding what the customer desires and what will make them comfortable, not only in the physical plant, but in the associate behaviors.
And you're speaking today about hospitality, the hospitality industry, but I think these kinds of things are things that all businesses are going to need to consider. Would you agree with that, or?
100%. I do a lot of work with people who are not necessarily in the hospitality business, banks and insurance companies and things like that. And they're also trying to identify what's going on in the future and how did they react and act going forward, because it is a big challenge. Things were changing already. When's the last time you went into a bank I don't think I've been into a bank in 10 years. And so I think that things were already changing. And I think this is going to escalate that change in terms of how technology is used. And while we'll still be interacting, I think we'll be interacting differently.
Yeah. What, when you think about this going forward, what do I'm reading so much lately about customer loyalty programs and how those really have to be beefed up, because some of those customers we used to have won't even be around, and there will be new customers. And so to bring some of those people in, is that something that either in your consulting business you see, or at Delaware North that you're seeing, or what kind of emphasis is put on those, or what should be the importance of that? Or is
Well,
that
customer loyalty programs are very industry specific. And I think secretly, if you talk to people who are well known for their customer loyalty programs, car rental agencies, airlines, hotels, I think you'll find they probably secretly tell you, gosh, they wish they never got into that business. It's expensive, it's costly. And I'm not sure that they had the benefits that people thought they were. And so I use myself as an example. I typically travel on one airline, and I consider myself a prisoner of that airline because all of my upgrades are with that airline. All of my points are with that airline. All the benefits are with that airline. And so there's loyalty, and then there's being a prisoner. And I think that a lot of people are having that view. I do think loyalty programs can be very important in some industries. They can, in fact, help change behaviors or alter behaviors. The casino business is a great example. They've mastered loyalty programs in terms of altering their patrons' behavior. And I think that they do drive some choice. I think they can be very expensive to operate. I do think that what we have to look at in loyalty programs going forward is more about personalization than about reward. How can I use my loyalty program to personalize my customers' experiences as opposed to try to reward them for certain behaviors?
That's a great idea. I mean, that's a good way to look at it for sure. What about, and this is something that's certainly been of interest to me because I haven't been able to get out as much certainly as I would like to have, but I'm part of the masses. Social media has just had a huge uptick. I read recently it was like 10.5% more people from July of 2020 are using it, looking at it, doing business on it than did a year ago. What kind of difference do you think social media is having or will have going forward in your business?
I think it continues to grow. We, about 2 years ago, really started a social media platform that helps us monitor and respond to our customers across all of Delaware North. And it's increasingly important. Every consumer has a voice that can reach thousands of people. And every consumer can give their opinion, and every consumer becomes a critic. So not only from that review site perspective, things like TripAdvisor and Yelp, et cetera, can that have a tremendous impact on your business. There were studies out of Cornell relative to the lodging business that the revenue generation out of positive social reviews is enormous. And so I think that will continue to play a role, and that role will continue to grow. 98% of all travel for consumers begins on the internet.
Yeah.
Exploring, making reservations, trying to identify where they want to stay, where they want to go. And so that becomes an increasing part of that. I think social media in promoting business is also very important. I think I have seen where it has been a big detriment to certain businesses where they have used it in a way that may not be appropriate for their business, or to express very strong opinions one direction or the other, whether they be political or social opinions, and they've had negative impact on businesses. I've seen companies who have remained more inclusive, more caring, more helpful on social media, have been able to use it much more successfully. And in today's age where we can't talk in person very much, that is a way to communicate about your business.
Yeah, well, especially when you think, and I don't know who said this, but it takes like years to build your reputation, but it only takes about 5 minutes to destroy it, or to
Yeah.
destroy your whole brand. And especially with some of those things that you were talking about earlier, and that is the fact that people can comment. I know a business locally, now this has been a few years ago, but there was one negative experience that took place in this place of business. And that person put it on social media, and it literally went around the world. And that person ended up losing their help, losing their clientele, losing the business.
Yeah, it's very powerful, and it can cut both ways. Certainly at Delaware North, we had an incident where one of our patrons in one of our stadiums thought we had run out of a certain product because one stand had a temporary inventory shortage that lasted about 5 or 10 minutes. And so he tweeted out that we ran out of this particular product, and it became viewed by thousands of people. The news media actually picked it up, and it wasn't even accurate. And so that's the challenge sometimes, is I can kind of say almost whatever I want, as long as it's not slanderous, and get away with it. And so that can also be a challenge. And that's why organizations monitoring social media has now become so important.
Absolutely. There's a term out there, Bradley, that I've heard, and it's they refer to it as deep onboarding. In other words, where you got to take the customer's hand and you better hold it all the way through, make them feel a part of the family. I mean, all of that certainly has been important in developing customer loyalty, going beyond customer satisfaction. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned it. It certainly is a trend. I see, and I have a lot of friends who are recruiters, and I have obviously lots of friends in the customer experience business, and people who are considered leaders in that field. And they are constantly talking about the onboarding, and that so many organizations are adding these onboarding leaders to onboard their clients, to get them fully vetted and interested and loyal into your business, especially going forward. And so the amount of jobs that you're seeing in that field, as well as customer success leaders' jobs, it falls directly in alignment with what you're saying. I think that organizations are seeing that necessity, that they have to really embed their clients or customers. You can't do that in a consumer, a typical consumer who's coming into a grocery store wants to buy something, but with a client that you have an ongoing relationship with. And so we're definitely seeing a tremendous amount of that happening. I think, from my view, the challenge is they're not looking at the organizational structure to see that if it is in fact a customer-centric business, and moving in that direction. And so when I work with folks, I talk about 4 pieces of a customer experience puzzle. And the first is your leadership, and then the second is your associates, and the third are your client partnerships and vendor partnerships. And then the fourth piece of the puzzle is actually managing that customer client experience. And so those first 3 things come first: having good leaders who can lead in a way that's focused on being customer centric, having associates that are engaged, that you focus on engaging them in their work, and then having great relationships and partnerships, win-win relationships with clients and vendors. I think Bill Marriott got it right, decades and decades ago when he said, focusing on my associates is going to provide great outcomes for his customers.
That is absolutely my way of thinking, because when you're focused on your own people who are focused on your customers, that can't help but be a win. So
Agreed.
you can hire a person, but that's different than having the whole team of people being customer focused.
Right.
And it
it's
starts
so,
with the leadership. You're right.
yeah, 100%. And it's so, I have actually turned down clients where I didn't think the leadership would actually lead the business in a way that was customer centric. When you talk to them about how to design their products and how to deliver their products, and you say, well, what we're going to do is first talk to customers and find out how they want them designed and how they want it delivered. And that's the need we're going to meet. Oh, I've been in this business for 50 years. We're going to do, congratulations. I hope you make it another 50.
Yeah, well, it's why are we in business in the first place? I mean, that's the big part, right? Why
Right.
are we doing this? And it had better be buyer back. It had better be, what is it they're interested in? And it's amazing how many companies totally miss that. I think we miss that internally with our internal customers, as well as obviously with our external customers. But you bring up leadership, and obviously leadership has been my focus for a very long time. And I'm wondering if you have anyone or anything that has influenced you specifically, either a leader that's been specifically influential or something that has definitely had an impact on the way you lead personally.
Yes, actually. And I mentioned Bill Marriott earlier. And while I literally only met Bill Marriott once, while working in a Marriott hotel a long time ago, following his style, reading his books, and seeing his example spread throughout the Marriott organization. When Bill Marriott would go to a hotel, he wouldn't consume much of his time talking to the management team. He would go back and talk to the housekeeping team, to the people doing laundry, to the kitchen team, and ask them how things were going from their perspective. He was very engaged in the idea that we have to perform well with our associates, and we have to perform well for our customers, and we can do that through our associates. So definitely Bill Marriott has been a big influence on my career. Also, some people who I've worked with in the past who are not well-known names, who were very similar in their style, where they were always accessible, they were always thankful, and they were always complimentary of things that went well and offered help for things that didn't go well. And those are the people that I have had the best time working for and with, and who I hopefully emulate in some way.
Well, I'm guessing you do, because that is such a focus and it's such a passion for you. At least that's what I know of. It certainly seems to be. That's wonderful. It makes me think, obviously, I never knew these two people, but they're two people I've certainly read a lot about, Steve Jobs, and I have read a lot about Walt Disney, but they have some quotes, and there are two that I will not, and I say I won't forget them. I probably am going to forget them right now, but Walt Disney said, do what it is you do. Do it so well that other people will want to see you do it again and again, and they'll bring other people with them to see what it is you do. So going to those frontline people that you were talking about and finding out, what does it look like from your perspective? My whole focus is fearless participation, all the way down to those who deal face to face every day with a customer. And of course, the Steve Jobs was the one that said, you got to get so close. You've got to be so close to your customer that you know what they need before they know they need it. And
Right.
that comes from doing exactly what you do, what you said Mr. Marriott did.
Yeah, that Disney quote, it's
Knowing
funny
people.
that you mentioned that Walt Disney quote. I developed some online learning in terms of service delivery,
Mhm.
and one of the classes actually opens with that quote from Walt Disney, because it is true. Doing what you do so well so that they'll tell others about it and want to bring their friends, that really is the epitome of hospitality. And Disney, has taken the lead on that for decades, based upon the principles of Walt Disney.
If people wanted to know more, now this is not typically in an interview where I would ask this, but since you bring it up, I'm going to ask if they want to know more about that program, how would they get it?
Well, that was actually proprietary for a client.
Oh, okay. So it
So
isn't like you've got it. Well, maybe you need to put another version of it out there,
yeah,
get it out there
um,
for people.
yeah, it was fast. It was a fascinating study because they weren't really interested in doing online learning, because they thought that how can you possibly teach people to give good service in an online environment, which is hilarious now looking back after COVID, where everybody's
Isn't
online doing everything. And research demonstrated that people learned more effectively online. It was at their own pace. They could guide their own learning, and they had significant improvements in their customer service, their overall satisfaction and net promoter score, after all of their associates went through the online learning. And hilariously, it also cost about half as much to do online learning. It can be done faster. You don't have all the added costs of putting people in a room and having a facilitator and all those other things.
What do you think, if you were to identify a leadership challenge, what do you think is going to be the greatest leadership challenge within your industry in the, I'm going to say, near future?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One is producing good leaders. I think that's the challenge of organizations in hospitality, especially. I think what's great about the hospitality business is it's still an industry where you could start out being a front desk clerk or a housekeeper, or a breakfast attendant in a hotel, and you can work your way to be the general manager of that hotel and to even larger positions, because it is a business where what you can do still matters, as much as what it appears on paper you can do through your degree.
Mhm.
And I'm happy to say, through my career, I have been able to elevate lots of people through the ranks of the organizations I've worked with. And so I think giving those people the leadership skills they need. Just because I was great at one job doesn't mean I'm going to be great at supervising a bunch of people, as you well know.
Right.
And so the key is, how do I develop those soft skills necessary, and some hard skills like understanding P&Ls and things, to people so that they can be successful as a leader. So I think that's probably one of the new things. I do think, going back to what I said, relative to challenges of things like wage gaps and childcare, healthcare, I think those are big issues that business is going to have to eventually step in and help solve from a social perspective. So I do think that is a big challenge as well. I think that I'm not a huge believer in the whole generation, A and B and C, et cetera.
Mhm.
I think that people are people. And sure, there might be some differences as to how you reach them, because obviously younger generations are online on their phone, and that's a way you can easily reach them.
Right.
But I don't think leading people has changed dramatically in terms of understanding their needs and meeting their needs and engaging them in their work. And so if you're a good leader, I think that you can do that regardless. I do think, lastly, which is also kind of a social issue, but What's fascinating with the current situation, historically, when America has had financial crisis, 25% of the wealthiest people and 25% of the poorest people in the United States tended to have similar impacts to them from financial crisis. So if you think back to 2008 or the early 90s, there was impact on both high and low end of wealth. What we've seen in COVID from some research that I've been looking at, again, trying to understand our customers,
Right.
is the top 25% have had almost zero impact to their lives, especially financially, compared to the lower 25%, which have had a significantly greater impact than ever before to their lives, especially in the financial, because all the jobs that were lost were all frontline jobs.
Right.
And so I think that social picture is a big part of leadership. And I think you're going to find businesses in the near future stepping up to the plate to help provide some of those more than before. You look at other great organizations like Marriott, and they were helping with healthcare and providing childcare and doing those things in the past. But I think you're going to find that that's a big trend in leadership now, is trying to help solve some of those problems socially. But again, before that, I think is the idea of leadership and taking those people that they're promoting and hiring and really developing their skills.
Yeah. What would you, if you were to say, okay, here's my advice for leaders, given that we're talking about leaders here, here's my advice for leaders. What would be your advice to them today in your industry for future growth and stability, or stability probably first and then growth?
Well, from a stability perspective, I think you have to, and I hate the word pivot because everyone's using pivot.
Well,
But
we
I
all know
think,
what that means.
I know, but I think that organizations have to start thinking about new ways of conducting their business that can grow revenue opportunities. I think that's first and foremost. And some of them are well known and very logical. If you're in the restaurant business, you're going to do takeout and perhaps delivery as an example. But to really kind of rethink businesses and where you can produce revenue streams. So a high-end steakhouse becoming a butchery that sells its raw meat to people, as an example, taking that next step. I know of a gentleman who's developing drive-through pizzerias as a national franchise, where it's kind of by the slice drive-through, so that he can create a new revenue stream.
Mm-hmm.
So I think rethinking your business, no matter what your business is, how are you going to generate revenue in a new or different way? And that takes thought and creativity and some innovation. So that's the first thing. I think you have to understand, how am I going to reorganize my business and survive and do things differently. I think from the perspective of other advice, I think what I know is organizations large and small that focus on actually those four components I talked about before: their leadership, their associate, their partnership, and how they manage the client experience or customer experience. That's the way to growth. That's the way to consistent financial success. Because you can be where you may churn a lot of customers, and eventually you're going to run out of customers. And you can be where you may have a captured audience. But eventually, what we know is that captured audience spends less and less and less, and you're going to respond by raising your price and raising your price and raising your price. And then eventually you're in a place where you're stuck and you can't do that anymore. And so leaders must focus on being more customer-centric by simply operating their business in an excellent way, in a way that is focused on what the customer wants and needs. And that's never been a losing proposition, where a lot of other strategies have led to a lot of business downfall. But being customer centric and focusing on operating in an excellent way is never a losing strategy.
No, it's always been, at least in my mind, those companies that really focus on me. I'll say
Mhm.
me as the customer. You know, they care about you. You know, they want your business. You know, they'll go the extra mile. You'll know that they take the time to understand what you're really looking for. They're like light years beyond those that just see you as another one, another number, just another one. Maybe it's time for people to go back to, and you didn't use this terminology, but I heard it in there, that SWOT, SWOT. What are your
Mhm.
strengths? What are your weaknesses? But here's the thing, what are those opportunities that you were talking about? And what are those threats? What are those things? So this business of the drive-through slice of pizza, I mean, yeah, why not? Because people aren't going inside. There's still
Right.
a lot of people right now that if you could eat outside, like we had some restaurants, and of course I can only say locally because I haven't been anywhere this year. Um, but if you could eat outside, those restaurants were doing really, really well. Now I haven't been back to them myself because now it's pretty much inside. There are a
Right.
couple I know that have really accommodated people, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how those businesses maintain and or perform going forward. But I
Yeah,
would,
I think innovation is really the key and focusing on customers. And that's kind of takes us back to what we started with. So, what would bring the customer back? How are you future looking when you're getting voice of the customer data and information? And so that I think is the key. What makes that customer comfortable? Again, being customer centric. What will bring you back? What are you looking for? What must you have? What would be nice to have? And identifying those things. You talked about outside dining. There's some restaurants doing some fascinating things with igloos. They're literally kind of plastic igloos that they
Mhm.
put outside that are heated that you can eat outside. And so I think that going back to that original idea, listening to what that customer will do, and being able to predict that behavior and give them what they want.
And making sure that the whole organization is aligned so that they all know this is our mission, this is our business, and we all have to pay attention to whoever that customer is.
Right, and support that and celebrate the associate who goes out of their way to do something for a customer, to celebrate the associate who made a decision to do something for the customer, even if it wasn't the best decision in the world, but to celebrate the fact that they made that decision, that they were focused on the customer, that they were trying to do right by the customer. And as a leader, you only learn that from talking to your associates and talking and listening to your customers.
I know somebody that said that they do this in their business, that this is not the hospitality business, but I know that there's at least one big hotel chain that does this regularly, but they every week on a Friday morning, all the employees kind of line up and they identify somebody, they give an appreciation to someone on the team, and they talk about what they did and how they did it and how that contributed to help their clientele. And people love it because there's absolutely no one that doesn't appreciate being appreciated. It's a basic human need. So if we're
Yeah,
talking externally, it's equally important internally.
agreed. And leadership just needs to continue to keep their eyes open to see what's happening, to learn about their business from the front lines, and that is a successful practice to instill in yourself every single day.
Mhm.
I remember when I was the first time I was ever a GM in the hotel business. That's where I really started my career. And so I would come in the morning and I wouldn't unlock my office door. I would walk around the hotel. I would go talk to the housekeepers and the laundry people and check in on what was going on and how things were going. And I talked to customers checking out in the lobby or having breakfast in the restaurant. And I probably spent the first 2 hours of my day doing that. And I had people coming up to me going, why are you in your office? What are you doing? Why are you out here? I'm like, well, because I want to know what's going on, and I want to be able to help you provide a great experience to the customers that we have, to our guests. And so what often is common sense isn't often so common.
No, and they need you in the hospitality business for sure, because I know personally I've spent nights, many, many nights for the last 30 plus years in hotels all over the country. And there are those that are really good, and there are those that you want to say, oh,
Yeah.
it's just amazing what we may take for granted. Not everybody does. So I think they're not thinking customer, or they might be at the front desk, but they're not thinking customer when it gets back to housekeeping, or it gets back to maintenance, or it gets back to food service. It's the whole organization, as you said earlier, being customer centric, and that
Yeah.
starts from the top down. If people want to get a hold of you, because you are director of guest services, operations, operational excellence and guest services, customer loyalty for Delaware North, but you also are part of a consulting business. If someone wants to get a hold of you because they're interested in this, how would they go about doing that, Bradley?
You can easily reach me through Delaware North, or you can easily reach me through our website for our consulting organization, which is shgonline.com. And you can clearly look at some of the work that we do, and sign up for our newsletters that give you all kinds of tips and hints and assistance in managing your customer experience.
Fantastic. You've been fun. You've certainly been fruitful, hopefully, for people that have listened to this. You've given them lots to think about and some great ideas. And I just want to thank you today for being on this podcast and honoring me with your presence and your expertise.
Well, you are most welcome. It is always a pleasure to chat with you, Mary Jane. It's always fascinating, and I always learn something.
Well, likewise. Thank you so much.
Thank you.